So what we're going to do is here in the test folder, we're just going to create a test file, which is adding.test.js. And I'm just going to add some tests right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up this test file, but it's going to call a function which is called sum is equal to require. And we're going to make it to the pathway in the JavaScript folder. So we need to call it JavaScript, and I'm going to call it adding. And here in the JavaScript folder, I'm just going to make adding.js. So that's where it's going to be referencing. And let's continue the test file first. So you're either going to be provided this, or you'll just write this out. But if you're in my class, depending which level you're at, you will be given the test files. And what we're going to do is I'm going to write a before all. And what this before all is doing is it's saying before doing any of the tests, just run this so then it can perform this action. Then I'll add after all. And in here, we're going to console.log after all. It's just more for you to see like what is running at what time. So you don't have to do all these. And there are use cases as to when you would use this, but I'm just going to keep it really basic right now. And then I'll put a before each. And you'll see when I run this that it's going to actually show things in a specific order. This is why I want to show you, based on the console logs, what's going to be called. After each. And I'll make a test right here. And what I'm doing here is I'm just adding some sort of note here that what I'm going to be doing is adding or adds 1 plus 2. What I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be adding some sort of message here. And I'll just say adds 1 plus 2 to equal 3. And then I'm going to expect something, which is the sum of two numbers, based on the function that's going to be called. And it's going to be 2b, means that this, whatever the sum function does, at the end, it's going to have to equal to 3. And it's going to return 3 back to the test. So if I put another test here, which does not equal to 3, we can set this up as well. So it's saying here if we pass the function sum 1 and 2, it will not 2b 4 or whatever other value other than 3. So it will return an error back if it's anything else other than 3. And you'll see here we'll get some sort of message. So if we actually run this in the terminal, and in the README file, you can see here that either we can run it by npm test or Jest, depending on what packages you have installed or what operating system you're using. You have to double check which one you can use. So if I just go back here and I'll do npm test, And what you can see here is that it failed just because we haven't actually set up the adding.js file. Right now it's blank, so we have to actually do something in here. But let me just go over this code that I just created. So the reason why we got this error here as to the sum does not equal to 3 or adds 1 plus 2 equal to 3 is because right over here in our actual adding.js file, we have nothing inside yet. We need to export something in order to make it work. So in this adding.test.js file, I'm just going to go over what it's actually doing here. So what we're doing here at the top is we're going to make a function called sum, and the sum function will be here in this pathway JavaScript adding. And what we're going to do is it'll say before all, run this, after all tests, run this, before each test, run this, after each test, run this. And we can actually see it here. Right here, it says before all testing and adding, before each, after each, before each, after all. So you can see here that what's happening is there's a specific order that is being ran for the unit tests. It's all shown in your terminal. You just have to know why you're using before all or after all and so on. But I'll get into that in another video. For now, you just need to see that it's going to display in different orders in the terminal. And what we're doing here is in this actual area called test, this is the actual test files. So whenever you call test, this is what we're actually testing for. And what we're doing here is, it's just you can write whatever message here. It's more for us to keep track. And then we're using this brackets with the arrow function because we're saying, okay, we're going to perform this type of action. And in this action, we're expecting that this sum function will take in two parameters, 1 and 2. And when we do pass number 1 and 2, then we should get back the value of 3. So we should get this exact value of number 3. If we do not, then it will fail, because if we go down here, does not equal, you can see here if we put dot not and dot to be, it means the dot not just means that do the opposite of what we've done up here, and because it does not equal 3, it's going to return some sort of error, and this should show up right over here as well. So right over here, it'll say right here, does not equal to, sum is not a function, and you can see here that it is doing some sort of red error over here. It's because we have not set up the actual function yet in the adding.js file. So we need to set this up first. So right over here, we're going to actually work on adding the information, setting up the function that will actually perform the task. So in order to perform this adding functionality, let's first set up the basics. What we must always have in here is a function. And because over here in the test file, you can see here that we called it sum down here, but also sum up here. So we have to call that name of the function the exact same. It has to be sum, so function is sum. And how many parameters are we passing through? If you look at the test file, you can see here that we have the value of 1 and 2, so we must have 2 values that are being passed over. So what we can actually do is, let's just give a generic value, A and B, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be returning some sort of value. So right over here in the actual test file, you can see that when we do the sum of 1 and 2, the answer has to be 3. So when we sum something, it just means to add. So if we go back to our adding.js file, then all we have to do is A plus B, but we're not done yet because we have to export this. So this has to be a module dot exports equals to sum. So the sum is this actual function name. So we're saying export this value, whatever we're returning, export the sum function to wherever it needs to be. because the test file already knows that based on this pathway right up here, that we need to find the test file in this location, it's referencing, this test file right here is referencing that JavaScript file in that location, so it knows to return it back to the same file. And this is the file that is referencing the sum function. So the name of the function has to match, and you have to have the correct pathway of the file and folder structure in order for this to work. But also when you're actually doing these tests, you can see here we have to expect a certain value, and if we do not expect that exact same value, then we will get back an error. So let's save this and go back here as well to our adding.js file, save it, and we're going to run this one more time over here to see what we get. Alright, so it says one thing has failed. So let's go over here. Let's see what we have missing is we have our adding file which has the sum a and b, and then we are exports module, and we're returning a plus b. So let's go to adding test, and let's take a look here what is wrong. So it says there's some error, does not equal 3, cannot read property of undefined reading to b. Let's look at the brackets first. So we have does not equal to 3, okay, bracket, bracket, we're expecting something. Okay, so we're just missing, we're putting the bracket here. So we have to make sure we put the bracket in the right location. So you can see here, cannot read property of undefined is because that we did not put the actual brackets in the right spot. So if you're getting this error, make sure you put the right brackets. So you see here that sum function is in its own bracket first with the value of 1 and 2 as its parameter. So after that there's dot not, and then there's dot to b, and here it's the bracket around 4. So you don't need brackets around everything. It's only around this sum function, and then afterwards you put the dot not and then dot to b. So if there's any errors, always look in the terminal right here because it'll always tell you, or at least guide you as to what is wrong. So you can always look into more of these different operations by looking at the Jest documentation online. This is just one method of using test files with Jest. So now that we fixed that error, let's just save this and let's just run this one more time here. So you can see here that once there are no errors, that the most important thing are these tests that you passed it, that there's no more red over here. This initially tells you that your tests have passed and there are no errors. Up here, there may be like different files, there may be different percentages which show up as like different colors. It's just telling you whether or not the line has been read based on your line of code. So sometimes it's red just because maybe it doesn't read a certain line of code because it's an if and else statement. So it only go into like one area in one of the either if or else statements, but not both. But here is essentially just giving it to you in a nice chart format. And then down here, it's the most important, which is telling you if you passed your tests or not. So always look at the bottom here, whether or not you've passed all these total tests. Because if you look back up at the top here, where it failed before, you can see here that it said 1 failed and 1 passed, and there's a total of 2. So before there was that error we had, and you can see here it tells you that there is 1 failed test, so something is wrong. But when we fix that error, and we scroll down here, you can see now that we get the green, which shows that we have passed 2 of the tests out of the 2 total that we have created.